Look at the road far ahead on a hot day. You can see it, a shimmer of water lying across the asphalt just up ahead. You drive toward it, and it's gone. Dry road. So you look further on, and there it is again, always just out of reach. You have chased that little puddle your whole life. And here is the strange part. It was never water. It was never even on the road. What you were really looking at was a piece of the sky. This is one of the most common illusions on planet Earth, and almost nobody knows what it actually is. It even has a name, a mirage. For thousands of years, it has fooled travelers, sailors, and entire armies. People have wandered into deserts and died chasing lakes that were never there. So what are you actually seeing? Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will watch a ship float in the sky. And the word itself tells you how baffling this was. Mirage comes from the Latin word mirare, to wonder at, or to gaze into a mirror. It is the very same root that gives us the words mirror and miracle. Because for most of human history, that is exactly what people believe these visions were. Small miracles or spirits playing tricks on tired eyes. And once you know what it is, you will start seeing it everywhere. On airport runways in summer, behind racing cars on a baking track, down a long, empty parking lot, that wobbling, watery shimmer at the far end of any hot surface. That is a mirage. Your eyes have been catching it for years. You just never had a name for it. So here's my promise to you. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why that puddle appears, why it always runs away from you, why a thirsty traveler sees a lake in the desert, and why on a cold sea you can see a ship hanging in the air above the water. And it all comes down to one simple thing that light does. Here is the one idea the whole thing rests on. Light does not always travel at the same speed. In empty space, it is the fastest thing in the universe. But push it through air or water or glass, and it slows down a little. And here is the magic. When light changes speed, it also changes direction. It bends. You've already seen this 100 times. Drop a straw into a glass of water and look at it from the side. The straw looks broken, snapped clean in half right at the surface. Go try it tonight, I'll wait. The straw is perfectly straight, of course. What actually bent was the light traveling from it to your eye. But why does light bend in the first place? Here's something you could try right now. Draw a simple arrow on a piece of paper, stand a glass of water in front of it, and look through the water. The arrow instantly flips the other way. The light literally bent as it passed through. It happens because light crossing from fast, thin air into slow, dense water has to turn, just like a car veers when one wheel drags through sand. Scientists call this bending refraction. So lock in this one simple rule because it explains absolutely everything that follows. Light always bends toward the slower side, toward the denser, heavier stuff. Keep that in your back pocket. Now let's take this idea out of the glass of water and lay it down on the road. On a sunny day, dark asphalt gets blisteringly hot, easily 60 degrees Celsius, 140 Fahrenheit. That is hot enough to actually fry an egg on the road. And that scorching road heats up the thin layer of air sitting right on top of it, baking it from below. Now here is the key, and it is the heart of the whole mystery. The air is not all the same. Right at the surface, it is scorching. A few centimeters up, it is cooler. Higher still, cooler again. So you have a stack of air, blazing hot at the bottom, cool on top. And remember, hot air is thinner and lighter than cool air. Look how fast the temperature drops with height. Watch what that stack of air does to light. A ray of light heading down from the blue sky enters that thinning hot air near the road. Bit by bit it bends, more and more, because it keeps turning toward the cooler, slower air above, until it actually curves all the way around, schemes off the hot layer like a stone skipping off water, and travels back up, straight into your eye. So a ray that left the bright sky takes this gentle curved path and arrives at your eyes from below, coming up off the road, as if the road itself were glowing with sky. But here's the trick your brain plays on you. Your brain has one stubborn rule it never, ever questions. Light travels in perfectly straight lines. Always. It simply cannot imagine that curve. So it traces the ray straight back, down to the road, and paints the blue sky right there on the asphalt. And that is the whole secret. That shiny puddle is not water. It is a reflection of the blue sky, bent up off a sliver of hot air and dropped onto the road. When you see water on a hot highway, you are literally looking at the sky, lying on the ground. Just sit with that for a second. Every single time you have seen water on a hot road, you are actually staring up at a curved image of the sky above you. Not water, not heat, the sky, folded down onto the road by nothing more than a few degrees of temperature. And now the runaway puddle finally makes sense. This trick only works when light schemes in at a really shallow angle, way down the road. As you get closer, the angle gets too steep, the curve can't form, and the puddle simply disappears. That is why it always sits just ahead of you, forever out of reach. This kind of mirage, where the fake image sits below the real object, has a name, an inferior mirage. Inferior just means lower. It is the one you will spot on almost any hot day, on roads, on runways, on a sun-baked parking lot. Now scale it up. A desert under the sun is basically one enormous hot road. The sand can reach 80 degrees Celsius, close to 175 Fahrenheit. So the exact same shimmering water appears, stretched right across the horizon. And for a thirsty traveler, desperate for a drink, it looks exactly like a cool blue lake, even with shimmering reflections. Whole caravans have walked for miles toward water that was only ever bent sky. The desert wasn't lying to them. Their own eyes were. And this has fooled some serious people. In 1798, Napoleon marched his army across the Egyptian desert. Over and over, his exhausted soldiers saw huge lakes shimmering ahead, with villages perfectly reflected in the water. They rushed toward them, and the water always retreated. It nearly broke their spirit. It took a brilliant mathematician traveling with them, Gaspard Monge, to finally prove those lakes were nothing but bent sky. And it is not your imagination that these surfaces get insane. Look at how hot things get just sitting in the summer sun compared to the ordinary air around them. That gap in temperature between the ground and the air is the engine that powers every single mirage. Okay, so a hot surface bends light upward and hands you a fake image below it, water on the road. But here's where it gets really fun. What if we flip the whole thing? What if the ground is freezing cold and the warm air sits on top? Then everything turns upside down. Over an icy sea or a frozen plain, the coldest, densest air hugs the ground, with warmer, lighter air floating above it. That is the exact opposite of the hot road. So now the light bends the other way. It curves gently downward, always turning toward the cold, slow air below. So follow the light from a distant ship. It travels upward, curves gently back down over the cold air, and reaches your eye from above. And your brain, still stubbornly insisting that light goes in a straight line, traces it back up, and lifts the entire ship up into the sky. And this is exactly what people see. A real ship, sailing calmly on the water, appears to hang in the air above the horizon, and sometimes a second copy of it floats there upside down. This is called a superior mirage, because the fake image sits above the real one. Now stack several cold layers of air together, and the light bends through all of them, smearing and stretching the image into towers and walls. Sailors gave this its own name, a Fata Morgana. Distant cliffs and ships rise up into shimmering castles, floating in the air above the sea. And that haunting name, Fata Morgana, it comes straight from Morgan Le Fay, the sorceress from the legends of King Arthur. Sailors genuinely believe she conjured those floating castles in the air to lure their ships onto the rocks. A medieval magic story, invented to explain a very real piece of physics. For centuries, terrified sailors swore they saw phantom ships gliding silently through the sky. The legend of the Flying Dutchman, the ghost ship doomed to sail forever, never reaching port, was very likely a superior mirage on a cold ocean. Not a curse from the deep, just bent light. And here is a chilling modern twist. On the night the Titanic sank, the ocean was unusually cold. Textbook conditions for a Fata Morgana. Some scientists now believe a thin band of bent, hazy air sat right along the horizon, hiding the deadly iceberg in a smear of false haze until it was far too late to turn. The lookouts may never have stood a chance, fooled by the very same bending of light. And it gets stranger. Because light can bend along the curve of the Earth, a strong mirage can show you things that are physically below the horizon. A coastline, a city skyline, an entire mountain range hundreds of kilometers away. Things that should be completely hidden behind the bulge of the planet itself. Here is one that will really get you. When you watch the sun touch the horizon at sunset, that sun has in fact already set. Geometrically, it is already below the horizon. The atmosphere bends its light up and over the curve of the Earth and lifts the image into view. The sunset you're looking at technically already happened. So here is something for you to try. On the next clear, hot day, find a long straight road or even a big empty parking lot. Crouch down low, get your eye close to the surface, and look off into the distance. The lower you go, the better. You'll catch it, that telltale shimmer of fake water. And once you have truly seen through the illusion, you can never unsee it again. So let's pull it all together. A mirage is never water, and it is never a ghost. It is always the same simple thing. Light bending as it passes through layers of air at different temperatures, and a brain that flatly refuses to believe light can bend at all. So the next time you're driving on a hot day, and you see that little puddle racing away from you up the road, you will know exactly what it is. You're not seeing water. You're watching a piece of the sky bent by a thin layer of hot air and laid gently across the asphalt. A tiny, everyday miracle that has been hiding in plain sight your entire life. If this changed the way you will look at a hot road forever, hit subscribe because we find this kind of hidden wonder in the most ordinary things. Look closely tomorrow. I'll see you in the next one.